In this video, I'm going to talk about how I got involved with being a modern day performing strongman, basically revealing a bit about my story. So this question comes from at Derek L. Shaw 4242. And they said, how did you get into this? How long have you been training? This would be referring to becoming a modern day performing strongman. Thank you for asking. Now, to answer the second question, I am, as of filming this, chronologically 42, and I'm going to be turning 43 the day after filming this. But I like to tell people I identify as 27, because strength training does tend to improve longevity, and I think it is the secret to being youthful. The fountain of youth is strength. So to answer your question, well, I'm 42 now, last day of being 42, and I started training pretty regularly when I was like 16, 17 years old. However, at the time I didn't really know what I was doing. I just kind of pieced things together, and I've been learning ever since. Now, how I got involved with this is back when I was training in gyms and stuff like that, the only information I really had available to me was like Arnold's Bodybuilding Encyclopedia, where he did talk about some of the strength performers of the yesteryear and bodybuilding magazines and stuff like that. But with all of those bodybuilding magazines, you have to take it with a grain of salt because they never tell the entire story. And just about all of those bodybuilders are on drugs. And the rules change when you're on drugs. And I am all natural. I've always been all natural with the exception of I used to take pro hormones back in the day before realizing what they were. And then once I realized what they were, I stopped using them. So when I left the gym and I discovered kettlebell training, I started picking up some of Pavel's books, Pavel Tsatsouline. And Pavel's books showed me that there is more to the story. And also, he talked about the fact that, man, it's really busy today here on Main Street. I don't know if my mic is blocking that out. But Pavel talked about the strongmen of the yesteryear in an era that predated performance enhancement drugs. And I was fascinated with their methods. And I was fascinated with the idea that people would perform feats of strength as part of a live show rather than just posing around on stage or competing in powerlifting contests, Olympic lifting, that sort of thing. They would actually do it as a show. It's something about that just intrigued me. So it was my fondness for the writings of Pavel Tsatsouline. And you know, like when people ask me for like information about programs and stuff like that, Pavel Tsatsouline's books are solid. If you just picked up any one of his books and just followed the instructions, you're going to get strong. The question then becomes, do you have the discipline to stick to a program? But it was my fondness for Pavel Tsatsouline's programs is how I met someone who I would later become friends with, a guy by the name of David the Iron Tamer Whitley. At the time, David was a master instructor for the RKC systems, which was Pavel's first thing with kettlebell, and then later became a master instructor for Strong First before leaving. And I kind of followed him. But I became friends with him to the point where he wrote the foreword for my book. But at the time, Dave was an up-and-coming modern day performing strongman. And when we bumped into each other at a conference, we had like an instant friendship that we still maintain to this day. Dave puts on a mini strength performance at the conference, rolls up some frying pans, and gives them to me, and encourages me to take part in the certification, which I did. And then it was at another conference I met up with Dave again. This one was a bit more local. And before we went out to dinner, he was in his room bending nails and horseshoes and stuff like that. And I was just fascinated by the idea of it. So he's like, you like this stuff, huh? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, you want to come as my guest to this conference that's happening next week? It was going to be in Newark, New Jersey, which is only like 30, 40 minutes from my house. And they were going to be celebrating the roots of drug-free training. And a lot of the modern day performers were going to be there. Prior to this conference, I saw a video on Dave's website where Dennis Rogers, who was a performing strongman that was popular back in the 80s and 90s, was holding back airplanes and motorcycles and rolling up frying pans and bending wrenches. And I was fascinated by it. So I went to the conference just to interview these people about the secrets of Kryptonian might. That's where I met Dennis Rogers. That's where I met Slim the Hammerman Farman. That's where I met Mike Bruce. That's where I met Sonny Barry. That's where I met Greg Metonic, who would later become my first mentor. And that's also where I met Hercules Chris Ryder, who would pick up where Greg left off. So I went to this conference just to interview people. That's where I met, and when I met Slim, he told me about the power that is in every single one of us and clued me in that a lot of it is in the mind. Now, fast forward 2 years, because I kind of understood what he was talking about. I get married, and within the first year of my marriage is already on the rocks. And I go to this conference just to try to get my mind off of things. And as I'm at this conference, I'm sitting at the dinner table, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, what the heck do I do now? Because every vision I always had for my life moving forward from that point, always had my first wife as part of it. And now it was a blank slate. But it was at that time that I was asking myself, what do I do now? Is when New Jersey Superman Greg Metonic just says to me, he's like, would you like to learn how to bend steel and become a strongman? And I said, yeah, I don't know. I'd love to, but I've bought books and DVDs and watched videos, and I don't know where to begin. And he's like, I'll teach you. And he points at another strongman that was my size by the name of Chris Sheck, who I think it was at the time was having the Bending Steel documentary following him around, chronicling his journey. Greg points at him. He's like, I taught him. I could teach you. So that began my journey as becoming a modern-day performing strongman, is getting through my depression first. And then it was January 9th the following year, which was back in 2012. That began my journey bending steel and becoming a strongman. And, you know, like one of the things with my first wife, when she was like reaching for reasons to hate me, was she started hating the fact that I had a fascination with strength training. So I decided to take everything that she hated and I ran with it. I ran and I would eventually set a world record in the very thing that Greg said could make me become one of the top guys, which became my finale feat, which is bending reinforcing steel on the bridge of my nose. So when I was with Greg, and I know that this is kind of taking it further, but heck, it's my video. That's one of the reasons I started answering questions in a YouTube videos, because I wanted to be able to give more long-form answers. What I found with Greg, and also with Chris, is that strength is an attitude, strength is a mindset. And the same things when I was trying to put my life back together, I was also reading these personal development books. And a lot of the things that Greg was telling me, that Chris was telling me, was the very same stuff that was in these personal development books. Just had a unique flavor to it. And I thought to myself, I'm like, man, this could become a really cool part of a motivational speech, which I would later learn to merge the two of them, packaged as one thing to take to conferences, to simultaneously entertain them while giving them lessons that will affect their life and affect their careers. So anyways, I hope that that answers your question. If anybody else has any questions, drop it for me in the comments below and I'll try to get back to you with your very own custom video answering your question and then some. But if you like this video, let me know by hitting that like button. If you want to see more of this sort of thing, or you want to see the chronicles from my various performances across the country, subscribe to the channel. If you think anybody should see this, please share it with them. This YouTube thing isn't rocket science. And if you want to support the channel, do all the things that I just mentioned, or you could take it a step further and you could either pick up a copy of my book, which is available, the links are in the description below, that reveals the full story beyond what I already just told you. Or you can also hit that super thanks button and drop a little bit of coin in my pocket. That sort of thing does help me out. It lets me know that you appreciate the content that I'm giving you. And I appreciate you sticking around this long to have me share the gospel of strength according to myself and the various people who I've learned from over the years. But that's it for today. Please stay tuned for next time. And in the meantime, please stay happy, healthy, and strong. Eric Moss, over and out.